All right.
Hey, as you as you all know, I'm Jeb. So I went to the same Army Engineering and Construction campus about last week. As you can see in the photo, that's all the campers and counselors that went there. It was approximately it was 37 people total. And if you can hit the next slide, or all right, so I'm just gonna get right into it. So when we first got there, we got there. Everyone arrived at Saturday last week. When we all arrived, we were all given a team, an assigned team, and I was part of the red team. And first day, we just basically did nothing too crazy. We just did icebreakers, met everyone, basically got told what's what, and we did one orienteering exercise, learning how to use a compass and how to properly, like, I guess, learn what paces are, if that's the right, yeah. And basically just learn how to orientate yourself with a compass. And so the reason we're all in teams is there's a whole competition throughout the whole camp. This, and like, given the activities, we're given points on the activities, what placement we got in the activities, and spirit throughout the camp. And yeah, sorry, I'm blanking here, but yeah, as you can see in the photos, we got basically that one photo is basically everyone sitting around waiting for Dan, who was the head counselor, I'm pretty sure, basically telling us, going over the whole camp. And then the second photo is my group and I doing the orienteering exercise or being told about it. Next slide. So after that day, next day, camp actually started, because that orienteering activity, there's no points towards it. But now this is the real deal. Real camp starts. Activities are graded, and yeah. So first in the morning, we always woke up at 6, and we left our activities at like 6:45. Or no, that was breakfast. Or yeah, we left usually around 7:45 to 7:30, or 7:30 to 7:45 is usually when we left for our first activity. First day, Monday. Wait, did I say? Oh, I messed up. I meant to say we arrived on Sunday, not Saturday, last week. But first day on Monday, we went to the Vicksburg Military Park, where the Battle of Vicksburg took place. We basically were in a bus. We did a whole drive around tour. We had a tour guide in the bus with us. It was a pretty good tour. One thing I do have to say is that in the morning, I was a little tired. I think a lot of other people were, and people in the back of the bus couldn't hear the tour guide as well. So, I mean, there was a lot of photos that the camp counselors took, and like a lot. These are all like a fraction of how many I took. And a little fun fact is that there's, like, I think one photo of people sleeping on the bus during this tour, just because some people couldn't hear it. It was the morning. It was very tired. But I mean, we did get out, so no one fell completely asleep, thankfully. In the first photo you see at the military park, you got I just took a photo of some cannons from the Confederate side. I was deciding either that or the large field of, like, where the battle took place. After that, we went to so I messed up here. That's the instructor name, Branford Songer. I I don't know why I did that. I got messed up when looking at the schedule. We actually went to Erdict. All right. Bradford Songer was the instructor there, and basically we got in our teams and we learned how to formulate, and we learned about concrete. And so as a team, we basically made a formula of concrete that would be the strongest, but also the cheapest. So then we would make that. As you can see in the second photo, that's me and the rest of our team start getting the materials after we had come up with a formula, getting the amount we needed to actually formulate this. Because we actually went out, or we went to the, I guess, workshop, I guess you could say. We gathered the materials and we actually made concrete, poured it. And another thing is that we also had to pass slump test, which is basically a test to see how well you can work with concrete. That basically that's what we did there. And throughout the week it would dry, and at Saturday we would actually get to break it or see like who would actually be the winner there, in a sense, who had the best concrete, strongest, cheap, at the cheapest price. I'll explain the results of that, I guess, on the last slide, because that's when it actually happens. Then lastly, or no, afterwards, we went back to where we stayed, which I am blanking on the location. It was something 161. I forget the actual name, but 168 I meant. But basically we went back to where we were staying, and we had a straw bridge competition where our teams would make the best straw bridge that would hold the most weight. Yellow team won that with about 26 pounds, because they realized that you didn't need to make I guess I forget what exactly it's called, but the upper part of a bridge that holds the upper part together. You didn't need to do that. You just had to have a strong base and then a good place to tape it, because we were using duct tape. So they found out how to win the best with just a strong base and strong tape placement. But it was still fun. And then lastly, we played Jeopardy. Depending on the team you'd ask, I think you'd get varying results of how people felt about it. Ask yellow team, I think they enjoyed it. Ask red team, not so much. Next slide. Day 2, this is probably the busiest day because we had 4 activities then. So first we went to, I forget the exact place. It was a business company. Basically we split up into groups of 4, and we went to we did multiple activities of just working with traffic signals, working with traffic signals. There was a lot. I'm honestly blanking on some of it. Learning. One of them was learning just like bridge, I guess, suspension. There's a bunch we did there. In the bottom left photo, you see me and my team and I basically doing a little bit of math for this traffic signal activity. Then we went to the CAV center. That there was about the same thing. We split up into groups of 4, and we basically did rotations around. So one area was with 3D printing, or like showing like 3D printing gadgets. I don't have an image there, but that top right image is one of the gadgets that they showed us. I forget the exact name, but it was a scanner, I guess you could say, that could basically, with like certain like dots, I guess you could say, that they could basically scan objects on that table and like render it on a computer very well. Then I am blanking on we also did at that place, we did a small like building a Lego car activity. That was more of a break than anything. we just built a Lego car as fast as possible as a team. Then we went and studied, and we looked at like a simulation program, so a program that would actually like you would use to like simulate, I guess, like simulate test, I guess you could say. We worked with that, and then lastly, we were in a room with like a camera that I guess it can scan like all around itself, and with like the thousands of pictures it takes, you can basically reprocess a whole room, I guess you could say, of what it takes. After that, we got back, and so then we got to see an actual Black Hawk from like an actual like I guess from like actual people in service right now. It was one used by like medics, I guess you could say, the Black Hawk, and we basically got to talk to the pilots, and we got to go inside it, as you see in the last image there. And the pilots there, they told us basically war stories of when they were like I guess like across the sea, I guess you could say. And then lastly, afterwards, we did a military challenge, which was basically we had to first design our team flag for Spirit. Then we built a tent, I guess you could say. I sadly don't have images for this. There wasn't too many images for this activity taken, but
Sorry,
yeah.
Jacob,
All right.
to break in, but we actually we have to stick to our schedule. So if you could just give
Oh,
us a
I'm
quick
so sorry.
summary
Okay.
of your experience for the last couple of days, we'd appreciate
I
it. Sorry to
I'm sorry. I
cut
didn't
you
know I was
off,
taking
but
too long.
it's
I
okay. It's
actually
okay. Thank you so much.
okay. So I'll go a lot faster here. So day 3, first we went to a presentation about AR, VR, and flood reservoirs, and basically how those work, and that happened. Nothing too crazy happened there. We did a like I guess a game there they had that like actually taught about how reservoirs work and how important they are. Um, then we went to an engineer Q&A panel. So we got to talk to people at Erdict who like worked there and were engineers. Sadly, most of them had similar jobs of being a civil engineer. So there wasn't too much diversity, I guess you could say, but I mean it was still great. Then right after extra, we did an emergency operations exercise. Probably I would say is the most fun I had there because it was a actual emergency operations exercise that they would use that like actual people I guess in the job would do. Um, and we all got in our different groups and we all worked together in a sense. It was really fun. Then lastly, we got back and we had a pool party. Um, that's pretty self-explanatory. Day 4, we went to an actual concrete plant where they made concrete, they filled concrete trucks with it, all that. We got to actually pour and make our own concrete slab, as you see in that rightmost photo there. Which that was really fun doing that as a team. Then we went to Erdic for the coastal and hydraulics lab, and there was multiple simulate. We got to see like machines that simulated waves. We got to see a, a simulation room that would like simulate ships, and that was just a blast. Then last we went bowling that day. As you can see, the days are just the end activities are just more fun. Then last day before graduation, we went to Erdict and looked at basically military vehicles and just like a simulation of how they use like a certain military vehicle. So we basically went on like a military truck and we saw like a simulation of of like how they would test a vehicle, I guess you could say. Then we had a soil exercise and a soil class exercise where we would classify soil an environmental exercise where we would just saw how dirt, I guess, or like dirt can like slow, I guess, water flow, or it was how water pressure and like soil like reacts with like water flow, I guess you could say. And after that, we went on a boat trip to Mississippi. I mean, on the Mississippi River. That was good. It was nice and fun on that trip. It was pretty chill. We were supposed to do stuff, but because it was a holiday that day, not as many people were working, so we couldn't actually do the activities we were supposed to do. So it turned out to just be like a casual boat trip for a few hours, which was fun. Afterwards, we toured a museum, and then after all that, we had karaoke. Just as you can see. So sadly, there's no graduation photos, so I just grabbed some photos of Red Team. So I also didn't mention it here, but we did before graduation. We packed our bags and got everything ready, and then we went over to Erdict to the concrete thing to test our concrete. And sadly, they couldn't get the machine working, so they couldn't actually break the concrete. But they told us who won, which was our team, Red Team. We won because although ours was the weakest, we had the cheapest by like $10 cheaper than like every other team. So that's how we won. Then we actually had graduation. They told us who the team one is, which was Red Team. Red Team were the winners this year. And lastly, thank you for sponsoring me. It was honestly a blast. I'm glad I could do it, and I hope you keep sponsoring people because I definitely enjoyed it.
Thanks, Jeb. Appreciate the update on how things went. Good
Yeah.
pictures in there. I think I saw a scan arm in one of them.
Yeah,
We
there
can
was
talk about that later.
yeah, that's what I forgot the name of it. Yeah, it was a scan arm. There was, I mean, if you go to the Facebook page, there's thousands of photos. Like, I mean, there's like 1,000 of them. Like, there's a lot for every day. There's just, it's honestly, I recommend checking it out. Just
All
because
right.
of how
Well,
many,
I'm glad we could help. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Rob to introduce our speaker, and we'll get on to our GSA Federal Procurement Landscape presentation.
All right. Thanks, George. For those who don't know me, my name is Rob Flowers. I'm the programs director for the Central Virginia Post. Just a couple things. I put it in the chat room, but if you want a PDH certification or need one for this presentation, email me. My email is rflowers@cabreraservices.com. I put it in the chat. Just email me and let me know. It usually takes me about a week to get it to you. And I tell everybody to send me a where the heck is it email if you don't see it by a week from today. And then any questions you have, I mean, we're jammed for time. So any questions you have, put them in the Q&A. If we have time at the end, Summer can we can look at the questions and answer, and then Stacy can try to answer them. If not, then, can email them. And then this is being recorded. So people can review and ask questions later. And I'm sure if I need to, me or KT or Summer need to reach out to Stacy, we can get an answer for you if you have a question afterwards. But Stacy is the National Account Manager for the Corps of Engineers GSA Federal Acquisition Services. And she also serves as the National Account Manager for Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and NASA. Prior to that, she worked for 15 years in the GSA Public Building Services, where she finished her stint there as the National Account Director of the Law Enforcement Defense Team. And she has her BS in Finance from University of Maryland and her MBA from Loyola College. And we're real appreciative to have her here talking to us about the federal procurement landscape. So take it away, Stacy. Appreciate it.
Thank you. First, I'm just going to apologize. I'm been on the verge of losing my voice, so I've been trying to be very quiet for the last day and a half. So hopefully it's not too bad. But thank you guys for inviting me to talk with you today. Quite honestly, I was enjoying Jeb's presentation more than I think. I don't know. I hope I don't put you to sleep talking about federal procurement. But I did want to come today. I love participating in SAME. The Small Business Conference is one of my favorite activities of the year. And while The Corps specifically isn't a huge user of GSA because obviously most of what they're doing is construction. I like to educate folks on the breadth of what the Federal Acquisition Service can do. And I think there's a lot there that can help complement not just the Corps, but the other services, the contracts that they're conducting to help them overall execute their mission. So as he said, I'm the National Account Manager for the Corps. Pre-COVID, I sat at headquarters at least once a week, and I'm definitely very eager to get back to doing that and seeing people in person again. Next slide. So this is the agenda for today. I gave a similar talk last fall at the last small business conference. So if you listened in, this will be a lot of the same information, but just with some updates. But I'm just going to touch on just what the federal framework and the landscape of procurement looks like. Spend most of the time talking about category management, what it is, and what the impacts you may be seeing on the procurement landscape. And then we'll finish out with just a little update on the frictionless acquisition, which is a cross-agency priority goal from the administration. And then finally, we'll finish up with GSA updates. Feel free to put any Q&A in the chat or in the Q&A function. I'll try to monitor it as I'm talking. And if there are things that I don't touch on that you're curious about, feel free to ask. I've been with GSA, I just hit 20 years. 15 was on the PBS side and now 5 years with FAS. So if I don't know the answer, I probably know someone that could help you. So go to the next slide, please. Just to start us off, just to kind of get our bearings, I just show this pie chart about the federal spending. On an annual basis, the federal government spends just shy of $600 billion a year. And that's everything from medical to professional services, construction, aircraft. Obviously, we all know the government is the single largest buying entity in the world. But just wanted to kind of show you the scale and scope. Next slide. And when we start to look at the federal contracting framework across that 600 billion, we divide it up into two distinct areas. On the left, you see common requirements, and that's usually around 360. We're eking up towards $400 billion a year on what we consider common spend. And then on the right hand, you see that's the high risk spend. Those are the defense centric weapon systems, aircraft, shipping, highly complex R&D, non-commercial type items. And it's just important to note that across the $600 billion of expenditures, the workforce, there's over 90,000 workforce and over 37,000 contracting officers across the government. There's more than 3 million federal contracts awarded each year to over 142,000 contractors. So I give you these little factoids to just show just the sheer breadth and magnitude of the federal procurement landscape. However, when we talk about all those individual contracting offices, we are not maximizing our buying power. And so the whole purpose of category management was to really focus on that left side of the graph with those common spend, because we have over 3,200 procurement organizations, and it doesn't make sense for each of those offices to be doing things in isolation and to be creating and duplicating efforts. So next slide. So that really sets up the intro of why the government has gone down this path of implementing category management. Started about 2014, just before I started in this position. And what it is, it's a strategic approach that enables the federal government to buy more like a single enterprise. It involves managing those large categories of procurement spend, and primarily we're focused on those commonly purchased goods and services. Now, I said we started this back in 2014, but it was really formalized in March of 2019. That's when the Office of Management and Budget issued a memo, 1913. If you have never read it, please Google it. It'll come right up. The memo was called Category Management, Making Smarter Use of Common Contract Solutions and Practices. In a nutshell, the purpose of the memo was to provide that like official guidance on the use of category management. Again, with the intent and the goal of buying those common goods and services as an enterprise to eliminate redundancy, increase efficiency, and deliver more value and savings from the government's acquisition program. Agencies will increase their use of common contract solutions and practices and bring decentralized spending into alignment with agency and government level spending strategies by sharing market intelligence, by sharing government and industry best practices, and by sharing prices paid data, which will all enable us to make more informed buying decisions. So we can go to the next slide. If you haven't seen this before, this is the structure of the common spend. We have created 10 categories. And sorry if this is a little bit small, but you will have access to all of these charts after the fact. But you'll see the top, and these shouldn't be shocking. One of the largest, if not the largest, is facilities and construction. And you'll see the actual dollar value that's spent on an annual basis, just shy of 100 billion for facilities and construction. They've also created subcategories, and the intent with this is to really drill down into finite areas so that we can create strategies around how the government wants to procure those types of commodities or services. So with the facilities and construction category, that is led by GSA. If you guys have never heard of Mary Rui, she's one of our assistant commissioners. And so she leads up that government-wide team. And there are members from all the services and many of the civilian agencies. And they work together to review how each agency has historically procured those types of goods and services. And then they develop future acquisition strategies of how they would maybe want to deal differently in the future. And a lot of that may be doing vendor outreach to see how the industries are changing, identify industry best practices, and figuring out, what is the best solution for the government. Next slide. And I already mentioned Mary, but again, for those, I don't know what the breadth of industry is on this call, but you'll see for each of those 10 common categories of spend, we do have an assigned government-wide category manager, and you can see which agency actually leads the individual efforts. So some of you may deal in the professional services realm with engineering, environmental consulting. That's also led by the GSA by Tiffany Hickson. But you'll see some, I think GSA owns about 6 out of the 10, but you'll see, for example, security and protection, that is led by Homeland Security, appropriately so. Next slide. So this is where things get a little complicated, but I wanted to introduce the topic to you in case you're hearing this from program managers or contract officers that you're dealing with within the government. Spend under management is really the concept and the metric that OMB is using to gauge our adoption of category management. They've created an entire tiering structure of that they evaluate all existing contracts. And so what is spend under management? It's defined as the percentage of an organization's spend that is actively managed according to category management principles. In other words, they're using smart decision making to buy those common goods and services through best value solutions. And that can be through a variety of different vehicles. But the intent is, and what really makes something spend under management is when we're sharing that prices paid information, we're finding and leveraging existing solutions, and with the intent that it allows agencies to shift from spending time on those common goods and services to provide a more focused effort on those mission critical and specialized buys. So looking at the chart, tier 0 is what we consider unmanaged spend. That would be your standalone contracts that really are not in alignment with category management. And then you see what is considered spend under management, or SUM, and the tier 1 through 3. Tier 1 would be an agency-wide solution. So if we're talking about the Army Corps of Engineers, that would be any of their enterprise contracts, like around environmental cleanup. I know they have submitted and gotten approval for tier 1 status of their small business construction contracts because they're viewing that as a portfolio approach, and that they are specifically being set aside for small business. Tier 2 would be a multi-agency solution. The best example of this is the GSA multiple award schedule. And then finally, tier 3 is also referred to as best in class. And that's a designation that is specifically granted by the Office of Management and Budget that says it is meeting all of those category management principles, and it truly is a best in class solution. All 24 CFO Act agencies, which DoD is one, has specific metrics, both of spend under management and best in class, that they must meet now on an annual basis. Next slide. So again, you will start to hear more and more about best in class solutions, you know, if for nothing rather than because it is a metric that each agency is being tracked on. Currently, there are 39 best-in-class solutions. GSA, as the lead acquisition arm of the government, has 23 of those. This is a list, and I can also send a PDF of this handout, but it can also be found on the gateway at that web address. But it's just important, I put this out there because best-in-class solutions will change over time. Just because something is a best-in-class today does not mean it will be next year. The intent behind this is that we are constantly evolving and maturing our acquisition strategies. However, if you are providing services under one of these categories, it's important for you as a vendor to understand what solutions are best in class, and that may be driving adoption and usage at the various services. And it's also just important to stay informed about what maybe the next generation of some of these contracts are, because I believe that the trend will continue, that OMB will continue to track both the spend under management and the best in class adoption. Next slide. So this has been a massive undertaking, but the category management implementation is showing results. So since 2016, which is when we really created the baseline, we've measured $40 billion in cost avoidance. The government's also moved $190 billion to higher performing vehicles. And again, it's moving the contracts up that tier structure. We've also reduced strictly open market contracts by 36%. And now there's about $44 billion being spent through those best in class contracts. So again, I can't stress enough how important it is to know which of those contracts are in your area, and be aware of how your individual customers might be adopting them. However, we're also proud that 30% of the spend through category management and spend under management did go to small business, which is greater than the government-wide average. Next slide. However, I would be remiss if I did not talk about the friction push-pull, if you will, between category management, small business targets, and the small business statutory goals. I want to be clear, especially because I'm sure a lot of you on the call are a small business, that each category has small business targets, and they are measured on the level of small business participation, both from a dollar perspective and from the number of contractors that we are doing business with. The use of best-in-class vehicles will not take precedence over meeting the small business goals. However, just to be a best-in-class contract, they have to be either fully small business set-asides or have aggressive small business subcontracting goals upwards of 50%. So I do think, again, there is, with all things acquisition, there's so many regulations, and so it is a balance that this individual COs and the individual offices will have to continue to weigh back and forth of what will go to a spend under management contract, and then what will be small business. And it doesn't have to be obviously mutually exclusive. Next slide. And again, there has been some pushback from the small business administration and the community at large, worried about the possible effects and impacts category management may have. However, we think, when we look at the numbers in terms of category management, there's a higher retention rate. Small business primes on those sum contracts are 20% more likely to win subsequent contracts than small businesses that are competing in the pure open market. I already mentioned this, but spend under management, the small business utilization is at 30% compared to the government-wide utilization of 23%. And the small businesses on the sum contracts earn 4.5 times more on average than tier zero, excuse me. So we do continue to closely monitor that, and it is something that's very much on OMB's radar to carefully balance the use of these spend under management contracts, but not to have adverse effect to the small business community. And so that's why I wanted to, the next couple slides are dashboards. And I don't know about you guys, but I love data. And GSA has done an amazing job of trying to put as much information out there available to the public. And so there's a variety of dashboards on a lot of different topics. The ones I'm going to show you today are on specifically category management. So you can both monitor the customers that you're doing business with and how they may be changing their buying patterns. And again, this is very important to understand. If USACE, for example, is moving towards more of these best-in-class contracts, it's important for you as a vendor to know what contracts you want to compete and to hopefully be awarded, and or who you may need to team with that's already on some of those individual contracts. So if we go to the next, so there's a variety of tools here. You'll see executive summary dashboard. That's where you can look at the progress by agency. The awards exploration tool is an amazing, to me, it's an amazing way to like look at a pipeline. You can go in and pull all the contracts that have been awarded for a particular agency, and you could drill down to a certain category or a certain NAICS code, and it'll really give you a view into how that agency is buying and then how you can prepare to hopefully compete for some of those expiring contracts. And then I also want to point out the small business dashboard. And I think that's my next. Oh, actually, go to the next slide. I forgot that I had a screenshot on here. This is actually what that award exploration tool looks like. Again, this is available to you. It's available to the public. You can go in here and filter a million different ways and then do a data dump of what is actually going on from an obligation standpoint. Great, great information. The next slide is a screenshot of that small business dashboard. And I really think this is important to see. Again, this shows you not just from a dollar perspective, but it shows you from account perspective of how many different small businesses is an agency working with? How are they spending it? You know, by quarter, how is the spend going out? I really think this is a good tool for folks to utilize, again, to see, because you can also see it over time. How are things changing? And I really hope it's not with a negative or an adverse effect. But again, I highly recommend go to the d2d.gsa.gov website, and just if you Google or you put in the search bar category management, I believe it's the second result, and you'll see that there is a public dashboard, and that it will take you to all of these that you can kind of play around in and learn a little bit more. In the absence of time, I'm going to skip, if we can just go to slide 19. And I'll just touch on a little bit. I've been, talking very generically about procurement and category management. I just wanted to spend a couple minutes on what's new specifically at GSA from the Federal Acquisition Service perspective. The biggest initiative that we continue to work on is creating and improving the federal marketplace. And the largest effort underway is the GSA multiple award schedule consolidation. If you have a GSA schedule, probably completely up to date on this, but if not, we went from 24 schedules down to a single multiple award schedule. We did a massive consolidation, and really it was kind of like our own category management within GSA is getting into alignment with those categories and also removing a lot of redundancy. We went from, I think, over 800 special item numbers to 300, and they are NAICS based with the intent that it should be much easier for both a vendor to know which special item numbers they want to market and sell to the government, and much easier for a contracting officer to quickly identify where the solutions are that they want to procure. I put a link to the new single solicitation. All the terms and conditions have been updated last year, and that was a massive part of the consolidation. The other two things I wanted to just touch on really quick, and I don't know if we have anyone on here that touches IT, but we are developing a new government-wide acquisition contract for IT services that will be a full small business set-aside. It's called Polaris. We have gone through a couple RFIs, and we're hoping to have the RFQ, the request for quote or request for proposal, excuse me, out by September. And that will be exciting because that will be a fully set aside vehicle for small business with a woman-owned and a hub zone track. So we're excited to offer that to the government. And then the other new solution that GSA is working on is a services. Right now, we're calling it the Services MAC. I don't know what the ultimate name will be, but for any of you who may have heard or are on Oasis, this will be the follow-on contract for Oasis when it expires in 2024. The reason it's not called Professional Services MAC is because we are actually expanding the scope of this IDIQ. It will encompass the professional services area, but we're looking to create multiple domains and continue to expand the scope. So we're looking at also pulling in facility type services, human capital and training. We're looking at maybe bringing in security services and long-term some additional like research and development. So it really is looking to be a very all-encompassing services type contract. So I encourage you to, regardless of what your industry is, to stay in tuned with that. And I can actually put in a link, I didn't put it here, of kind of the latest information on that. Current timeline, we're expecting, we're thinking have the RFP out in December, which would have us awarded probably late 2022, winter of 2023, which would still give us about a year and a half before Oasis expires. And then the two other things I put on here are just links if you are interested, if you are not a GSA vendor at this point and you think it's something that you might want to explore, that's a great place to start. It'll kind of take you through some questions to kind of see if that might be the right path for you to go down. And then last but not least, I didn't touch on any specific contract opportunities today, but GSA lists all their federal business forecast on the acquisition gateway. So you can get to it through that link and you can search by region or by service to see what might be coming down the pike for you. I think that is it. Next slide's Q&A. I have not been looking at the Q&A box, I admit. But I think, so yeah, so I will take any questions. And like I said, I've worked for GSA for 20 years. So even if it's not a question on the material that we chatted about just now, I'm sure I can either have an answer or I can find you an answer.
And this is Rob. I appreciate it. I haven't seen anything in the Q&A listed, but like Stacy said, if there's anybody has any questions or if something comes to your mind after we're done, just email us, let us know, and we can get in touch with Stacy to get the answer if you need it. Appreciate it. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You too.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks everybody for being here. And this all looks
That date
good.
is August 26th for that.
Yeah, I
memo
just saw that.
happy hour.
Yep, yep, August 26th instead of the 22nd there. But here's the things that are coming up. Thanks everyone for being here, and we'll see you again on the 5th Saturday of next month, July 29th, I think. 5th Saturday, yes. All right, have a good day.